On the cool Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001, a terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in New York City shook the nation as two planes collided with the Twin Towers, which eventually were reduced to rubble. As 2,996 people died in the attack and in the aftermath, the United States searched for a country or group to blame and get revenge on for the devastating attack. President George W. Bush and his staff immediately scrambled to find someone to attach the attack to, eventually landing on an enemy of the United States, Iraq, and their leader Saddam Hussein. It was claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction that severely threatened the national security of the United States, which eventually led to its 2003 invasion and bombing campaign on the country of Iraq, known as shock and awe. According to numerous polls recorded at the time, nearly 60% of the United States citizens supported the invasion of Iraq following the 9/11 attacks, based on information provided by the Bush administration. After a year of an intense war and bombing campaign, however, it was revealed that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction, and that the entirety of the invasion of Iraq was to boost morale for militarism in the 2000s, following unsuccessful and unpopular wartime efforts in Afghanistan and in the rest of the Middle East in the 1990s. At the time, many people were distraught and angry over the 9/11 attacks, and the United States government preyed upon these fears with misinformation attacks and fear-mongering about the dangers in the Middle East. However, nevertheless, the government is not the only entity to have exploited people's fears to drive up support for the war. Mass media outlets parroted the White House to sway people's support for the war in Iraq. But this was not the only genre of media that preyed on people's fears, as music, specifically country music, did as well in the early 2000s. It is no secret that music plays a key role in many people's lives. Often, music is made to make you feel emotions and to connect with the audience. This is what makes records sell, and at this time, people's fears of another terrorist attack were primed to sell records. In this, it shows us that music has a power to shape the minds of the many. One of the major players of this game was country singer Toby Keith, who made many songs reinforcing the idea of militarism and patriotism in the years after 9/11 that was made to garner support for the military and the war in Iraq. In this, Toby Keith's song Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, The Angry American, enforced the hegemonic ideal of militarism and national pride in the United States. While an imagined song that could have been written at this time could have been about coming together as an international community and not enforcing militarism and national pride to fight an enemy. In this speech, we'll analyze Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue and the ideals that it holds and supports in the context of this time in history. We also will be exploring the different ways that another song could go about reaching America without enforcing militaristic ideals in the military-industrial complex. As previously stated, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue is a song that was written and performed by country music singer Toby Keith. It was released in May 2002, only a few months after the 9/11 attacks. The song is about both the death of Keith's father, who served in the military, as well as the wanting to defeat America's enemies to the war in the military. At the beginning of the song, Keith describes how his father served in the military and fought for his freedom, and talks about how all Americans should salute the flag and support the military in all endeavors to be a true patriot. With lyrics like, American girls and American guys will always stand up and salute, we'll always recognize, when we see Old Glory flying, there's a lot of men dead, so we can sleep in peace at night when we lay down our head. The song then turns to how America is going to crush their enemies through brute force, and uses iconic imagery such as the Statue of Liberty and Uncle Sam to evoke a sense of patriotism with the subconscious of the listener. In the lyrics, Keith describes lighting up your world like the 4th of July, which is most likely a reference to a bombing campaign of some sort on a foreign nation. He also describes in the lyrics, when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell, and it feels like the whole world is raining down on you, which is most likely a reference to invasion and bombing campaigns on foreign soil. In the third verse, Keith then describes war as putting a boot up your ass, it's the American way, in reference to the pure might of the United States military crushing their opponents. At the time, Keith wrote many songs from a typical conservative point of view, through a typically conservative genre of music and country music. Country music has often been a mainly white and male genre of music, originally written to only be performed for military personnel at concerts. It was not originally recorded. It garnered such a positive reaction from higher-ups in the military that it was recorded and released. However, there was also pushback from many people who thought the song was too ignorant and brash and made Americans seem like war-mongering idiots. In a very public feud, Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks thought that the song was targeting whole cultures rather than specifically bad people or terrorist groups, and was a poor reflection on country music as a whole. To this, Keith responded by photoshopping a picture of Maines and Saddam Hussein together and displaying it behind him during a tour in 2002 and 2003. Peter Jennings, a lead news anchor on ABC News, asked Keith during a broadcast performance to soften the lyrics that he felt were too problematic, to which Keith then canceled his performance and sounded off him in a public space, attacking him for his Canadian-born roots. Nevertheless, the song was a success, topping country music charts in 2002. The song is still played today as representation of patriotism and support for the military. The main ideology that this song serves is militarism in the United States and support for it. Keith believes that if you do not support the military in all of its endeavors, then you are an anti-American traitor. Support for the troops is something that is close to many Americans' hearts, as so many people know someone that or are related to that are served in the military. And Keith employs this by talking about his family's military background and how they served to fight for our freedom. He also employs iconic American imagery such as the Statue of Liberty, bald eagles, and Uncle Sam. These images remind the listener of freedom, which also allows them to talk about how the military is the ones fighting for their freedom. Tying these two things together leads to people conflating the two together. In this, Keith has supported the dominant majority of typically white males who serve in the military as well as military supporters. However, with this, he is also harming marginalized communities such as Muslims in America and countries in the Middle East by painting them as a whole as the enemy of the United States, and the people that we as a country should be rallying against after a terrorist attack. Rather than the specific groups responsible, in this, a power dynamic is created by marginalizing these groups and viewing them as an evil and inferior to the great United States.
The song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, showcases feelings of patriotism and retribution. So the second song we created focuses on opposing values of the original song. When thinking about a song that opposes themes present within Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, it is important to think about the date that the song was released, the artist of the song, and the messages and feelings that are provoked within its lyrics. The song Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue by Toby Keith was released after 9/11 and promoted ideas of national pride and unity. When deciding the release date for our song, it made most sense to release it after a global incident rather than a national incident such as 9/11. We decided that this global incident should be a modern conflict such as the Ukraine and Russian war. By releasing the song shortly after the beginning of this conflict, it would accomplish the same goal as Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. The song we created, as stated before, would focus on opposite themes apparent within the original song. This means that we had to take into account the messages the song conveys, as well as the performer of the music itself. To start off, the title of the song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, evokes feelings of national pride and patriotism within the United States community. When we were coming up with a name for our song, we decided it was important to follow the same layout of the original title, while attempting to evoke different feelings than the original. We decided that the best name would be Harmony of the Blue and Green. This title still follows the original title's layout, while evoking feelings of global unity and peace. Harmony is defined as forming a pleasing and consistent whole, while swapping our nation's flag colors with blue and green points to the idea of a more unified global community where everyone cohabitates peacefully. While the song is important for evoking specific feelings, the messages conveyed within the lyrics are just as important. The song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, focuses on messages of patriotism, retribution, and national pride. This means that when creating our song, we would focus on ideas of pacifism, avoiding conflict, and global unity, all opposites of those messages conveyed in the original song. The beginning of the song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, starts off by addressing American girls and American guys. This specifically addresses only those who live in America, and more specifically, those who fit into the gender binary within this society. To counter this, our song's lyrics would address people around the world. This allows us to reach not just the American audience, but rather a global audience. Additionally, by avoiding using gendered words like girls and guys, we also reach the LGBTQ+ community and those who do not fit into the gender binary. While the song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, is directed to a specifically American audience, it also promotes retribution for the events of 9/11. Toby Keith states, "Now this nation that I love has fallen under attack. A mighty sucker punch came flying in from somewhere in the back. Soon as we could see clearly through our big black eye, man, we lit up your world like the 4th of July." This line references the attacks of 9/11, but more specifically, the actions the United States took afterwards. the words, "We lit up your world like the 4th of July," is about the war and the bombings that took place in Middle Eastern countries in the War on Terror. In our song, the lyrics would rather promote peace and pacifism, calling for an end to the conflict in Ukraine, rather than a war. This creates a stark contrast between Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue's message of revenge and our song's feelings of pacifism and anti-war messages. In addition to the messages evoked through lyrics and the title of the song itself, the performer of the song is just as crucial to the meaning. Toby Keith is a white, cisgendered man as well as a country singer. While this may be the societal norm in America, it may turn groups of marginalized communities away, as well as audiences of different nationalities and ages. To reach a broader audience, while also promoting ideas of peace and unity, we decided that the performer should be a woman from a marginalized community. This would allow for marginalized groups to better relate to the performer and therefore the messages that they are conveying. We also thought it important to switch the genre of the music itself. Country music is widely popular in the United States, yet fails to connect with audiences from different cultures or age groups. By changing the music genre to pop, the most popular genre worldwide, with younger audiences, we would once again be able to reach a global audience rather than an American one. Overall, our song would be able to promote messages of peace and unity through a different title, lyrics, and singer. By having a marginalized woman sing about global peace and unity through a more popular outlet of media, we would send a more peaceful message to a broader audience. However, by changing the lyrics and messages conveyed within the song, the stakeholders are also changed. Firstly, Muslim and Middle Eastern communities would no longer be stakeholders. This would relieve tension from the Muslim and Middle Eastern communities by no longer supporting the war on terror. However, another new stakeholder that would appear would be global leaders, and more specifically, leaders in the Russian war. With our song calling to an end of the conflict in Ukraine, this would create negative views and tension within the leaders of Russia. In conclusion, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, supporting militarism harms many marginalized groups such as those affected by the war in Iraq, as well as harming future groups that are affected by U.S. interventionism in war. Having people support this message through songs also affects those marginalized groups by manipulating their emotions with imagery and song. This is why our alternative artifact instead shows how we can have more international unity and national unity through pacifism rather than brutality in war. The alternative artifact could be about both the war in Iraq or more modern conflicts such as the war in Ukraine or the Israel-Palestine conflict. It is important that this song does not place the blame on marginalized groups, but rather promotes the end of war. As said before, Toby Keith's song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, The Angry American, enforces hegemonic ideals of militarism that harms many across the globe. This is why it is necessary to create a song that benefits these marginalized groups and does not harm them through pacifism and peace rather than warmongering. Obviously, some years have passed since the war in Iraq. The United States is now almost fully pulled out of the Middle East, ending a decades-long conflict. But this does not mean that all conflict around the world that the United States is in is over. It is important for the welfare of the international community that we do not further push ideals that would harm marginalized groups. You will never know when another terrorist attack will happen due to conflict somewhere in the world. So it is important that we promote peace and unity rather than a war to help strengthen bonds across the globe, as we as a world must do better to provide a better future for our children.